tumultuous welcome for Fidel Castro. A cheering, singing, flag-waving crowd of thousands greets the Cuban revolutionary leader and premier as on arrival he pushes past police and security guards to return the enthusiastic greetings, despite rumors of assassination plots against him. Outside Penn Station, police break up a demonstration by a few supporters of Cuba's ousted dictator Batista. And Castro, in a record slow time of 24 minutes, crosses the street to his hotel, almost swamped by the excited crowd. It's one of New York's most enthusiastic receptions for a visiting notable in quite a while. A tiny rural church in the tiny village of Søgne, Norway, becomes a familiar sight for Americans, and an unknown family named Rasmussen becomes world famous. Governor Nelson Rockefeller escorts the mother of the bride to the wedding of their children, a union of one of the world's richest families and one of its simplest. Mrs. Rockefeller goes in with Stephen. The 21-year-old bride is led by her father, Christian, a now renowned retired grocer. 5,000 well-wishers wait outside, amongst them hundreds of newsmen. What might have been a story for the society pages is headline news, a retelling of the oldest story. Anne Marie Rasmussen, once a maid in the Rockefeller home, is Cinderella come to life. Beside her husband Stephen, she is now Anne Marie Rockefeller. According to Norwegian tradition, they hadn't kissed during the ceremony, but they do for the American cameraman. A happy ending for a modern fairy tale, and they lived happily ever after. And as the year closed, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi of Iran made 21-year-old Farah Diba, a commoner, his third wife, in hopes she would give him a son and heir to the thousands of years old throne. In New York, the 79th birthday celebration of General Douglas MacArthur, former Supreme Commander of Allied forces in the Far East. The general slices into a birthday cake of a size and grandeur appropriate both to his years and his fame. Greetings from a pre-World War II aide, Dwight D. Eisenhower, are conveyed by Major General Leif Sverdrup and joined in by all the nation. A papal audience with all the honors traditionally accorded visiting royalty by the Vatican for Prince Rainier and Princess Grace of Monaco, whose state, although tiny, was observed by Pope John to exercise an influence far beyond its frontiers, especially in culture and art. In a private 25-minute talk with Prince Rainier and his wife, former movie star Grace Kelly, the pontiff congratulated the couple on their attachment to the church. An odd sidelight of the audience was a mysterious rumor of the possibility that Monaco might become a base for a possible Vatican high seas fleet. Immediately afterwards, the rumor was flatly denied. John Foster Dulles succumbed to cancer while carrying on arduous negotiations over Berlin. After a long and valiant struggle, his passing deeply stirred friends and foes alike throughout the world. Communist action gave the lie to talk of peaceful coexistence. India's Prime Minister Nehru gave refuge to the Dalai Lama, spiritual and temporal ruler of Tibet, together with thousands of his countrymen, after Red China had stamped out rebellion in the remote mountain land, making Tibet the Hungary of Asia. Nehru and India were further beset by Red Chinese claims to frontier territory, leading to armed clashes along the border. Britain's peppery Field Marshal Montgomery is warmly greeted by Premier Nikita Khrushchev, beginning 2 days of private talks on a wide range of world affairs. The Marshal's unofficial visit was viewed with loud apprehension by the British press. Earlier, he announced that American leadership of the free world has deteriorated. Many feared that similar freewheeling opinions while in Moscow might have serious repercussions. But on his return, Montgomery mildly apologized for belittling American leadership and opined that war over Berlin can be avoided. In the Senate hearing room, the dramatic climax of the probe of fixed and rigged quiz shows. Charles Van Doren's wife and father, poet Mark Van Doren, are in the audience as committee chairman Senator Orrin Harris opens the hearing. Charles Van Doren arrives to apologize and attempt to explain to the millions whose friendship and respect he had won. In his quiz show appearances, he also won $129,000 and earned a handsome broadcasting contract. Van Doren retracts his earlier denials of getting any assistance. He admits that he received dramatic coaching and the questions and many of the answers. But his statement is a rueful and moving realization that for his wealth and fame, he paid a bitterly high price.
Hollywood's biggest night of the year, the Academy Award ceremonies at the Pantages Theater. Returning to Hollywood after 10 years' absence, Ingrid Bergman attracts an extra measure of attention among the dazzling roster of luminaries on hand. Janet Leigh and Tony Curtis are others of the hundreds of stars and celebrities present for Hollywood's own accolade to its finest. The Academy's choice as Best Actress of the Year is announced by James Cagney.
Lucky Lovely, Susan Hayward, and I want to live.
Four times nominated, at last a winner.
David Niven.
The Best Actor of the Year, named by Irene Dunn. The Oscar winners for 1958.
The Variety Clubs International calls on Ike with the White House delegation that includes Kim Novak, Perry Como, and John H. Harris, the group's founder. To mark the club's 32nd year, Variety head George Eby presents the president with a gold lifetime membership card. Ike joins 10,000 from show business who combined forces to aid their needy and unfortunate, raising $75 million through the year.
Clever combination ensembles for swim, sun, and fun are Italy's seasonal bid for style leadership. La Bella Signorina starts the day ready for anything the sunny Mediterranean mood may bring. Chic daytime dresses that leave a gal ready to get right in the swim. The suits feature hip-slimming ruffles that look good even on them as don't need them. An exotic note is struck in this Japanese-tinged outfit. But Madame Butterfly came from Italy in the first place, and Italian fashions have proved popular indeed across the oceans. Which makes this fashion preview a pleasant prospect on this side of the Atlantic. The seasonal style line is functional as well as fashionable. All you need is bright sun and blue water for that Mediterranean mood. Even in the heart of London, Britishers boast you're never far from the countryside, only a few stories up. It's no tall story. This rooftop garden is incredible, but real. And what better setting for designer Norman Hartnell to introduce his new line for fall and winter. Woolens and tweeds are very much in evidence, traditional British strong points in the world of fashion. The entire collection will be featured at the Gala Scottish Industries Exposition later this year. Appropriately, this ball gown in pure silk satin is richly embroidered with a motif of Scottish roses in golden crystal. Continuing the Highlands theme, another evening dress in shirting material, brightened with the Macbeth tartan. Two more outfits in wool complete the show. British fashion artistry at its finest for the seasons ahead. On both coasts, gala premieres of a new hit. At New York's historic Palace, the Gotham debut of UI's Pillow Talk is attended by producer Ross Hunter. UI President Milton Rackmill and Vivian Blaine, his wife. Rock Hudson, star of the new screen comedy and Tallulah Bankhead. A surging, enthusiastic crowd greeted arriving celebrities. It was one of the Great White Way's brightest recent events. Sharing Sharing the popular ovation at the Palace, Thelma Ritter, another of Pillow Talk's comedy stars. It's a dual premiere, downtown, a benefit at New York's newest first-run movie theater. Fire Commissioner Kavanaugh wields the axe to open the new Murray Hill. Novelist Fannie Hurst and Hope Hampton are among the crowd of notables present. This showing of Pillow Talk, one of whose comedy lights is Tony Randall, is a benefit for the United Nations School, and Benjamin Cohen of the UN is but one of many dignitaries on hand. Across the continent, Hollywood's Egyptian Theater is ablaze with light. Esther Williams and Jeff Chandler among the Hollywood luminaries attending the West Coast premiere, with a beaming Rock Hudson just arrived by plane from the New York debut of the comedy success. And completing the picture, Doris Day herself, Pillow Talk's leading lady and America's #1 film star.
High style from the lowlands. In London, the leading furrier, milliner, and fashion house of the Netherlands team up for a joint fashion show to show that behind the dikes, they've come a long way from the page boy bob, starched white collar, and all that Hans Brinker of the silver skates jazz. Now, Amsterdam and Rotterdam are bidding to take their place with Paris and Milan as style centers. This is a new kind of Dutch treat. The Dutch have always been fond of furs, since the days of Henrik Hudson, in fact, so it's no surprise to see them keeping up with the fashion trends in furs. But the overall style consciousness they reveal came as a surprise to some. This elegant and impressive show in one of London's swankiest hotels should go a long way to put the rest of the world on notice that they're no strangers to the Empire line beside the Zuider Zee. Anyone who thinks different could really get herself in Dutch.
The nation's most famous fashion show, the 15th annual edition of the March of Dimes style event. Some 1,200 crowd the Grand Ballroom of New York's Waldorf Astoria, has on stage $500,000 worth of the latest spring fashions, operated by celebrities turned models, such as Maggie McNillis. Arlene Francis, escorted by Joseph Cotton. Claudette Colbert and Charles Boyer. Helen Hayes, First Lady of the American Theater. And Celeste Holm all help make this year's 2-hour show another brilliant fashion extravaganza. But the appearance of the real stars, the March of Dimes poster children, accompanied by Jimmy Durante, is a reminder that its purpose is support of the National Foundation's fundraising for its fight against crippling disease. The year 1959 brought new hopes of a turn for the better in the Cold War. It was a year of unprecedented travel, ceremonials, and consultations by the great power leaders. Vice President Nixon's free-swinging kitchen debate with Premier Khrushchev at the United States Fair in Moscow set the stage in more ways than one for Mr. K's tour of America. For a whirlwind 2 weeks, Khrushchev and his moods dominated the news, leaving no doubt of his toughness and his faith in the future of communism. The Berlin crisis he had provoked faded when he and President Eisenhower paved the way for summit talks. Relations between the Soviet and the free world took on a more amiable tone after the meeting at Camp David. But the underlying realities were unchanged, notably the Soviet drive to match American technology. It was a momentous year for the New World, beginning with the rise to power of Fidel Castro in Cuba. Castro and his bearded troops were joyously acclaimed following his incredible victory over Batista. But through the months that followed, the leftist course of his social reforms roused new opposition. Discontent spread through the Caribbean, and Castro lashed out at critics with courts martial at home and furious denunciation of United States policies. At year's end, Cuba remained a scene of unrest.
Cubana sabe también pelear y ganar batallas en este campo.
In Havana's Sports Palace, the Castro regime's controversial showcase trials get underway before a turbulent throng of 18,000. Batista aide Major Sosa Blanco, charged with 200 murders, faces a military tribunal. 3 judges still wearing the revolutionaries' jungle battle dress. Says Blanco of the crowd, "I am in a Roman Colosseum." Hundreds of correspondents report the charges as the major is faced by his accusers. Much of the evidence is hearsay, but much more is direct and telling. 45 witnesses come forward to tell of acts of brutality and murder. Men, women, and children testified. "I was only following my orders," says Blanco. Emotions climb in the 9-hour trial as the testimony piles up. This woman charges Blanco murdered her husband. The decision is death. Later comes word the trials will continue, but not in the sports arena.
Laos, the strategic key to Southeast Asia's richest areas, was attacked by guerrilla forces from Communist Vietnam, a Chinese puppet state. Through the year, Communist China's growing mobilization and aggressiveness caused mounting concern. This was the background to President Eisenhower's historic 11-nation tour, from which he returned at year's end to a tremendous ovation in the nation's capital. Following Alaska, a jubilant Hawaii became the 50th state of the Union. The islands made their mark on the news, electing the first senator of Oriental descent, and closing out their first year as a state with a blazing volcanic display. American-built Sabre jets of the Spanish Air Force roar overhead in a display of precision stunt flying designed to show that Generalissimo Franco's pilots are keeping pace with the jet age. A display of delayed action parachute jumping follows, with the birdmen trailing columns of smoke to mark their fall. Multiple leaps with the goal of hitting a pinpoint target on the ground as closely as possible. Of the Castellon Air Fiesta, a convincing show of preparedness by crack Spanish air commandos. Scenes of Vice President Nixon's tour of Poland and the popular enthusiasm that greeted him in many areas, despite lack of notice in the press of his schedule. Over 250,000 lined Nixon's route, overshadowing by far Poland's recent reception for Khrushchev. Dramatic and eloquent evidence of the popular temper here, in what is comparatively the freest of the Iron Curtain countries, and where the demands on the Vice President's talents in tact and diplomacy were possibly the greatest of his entire tour. A crowd of nearly 4,000 thronged the airport, including most of the White House staff and nearly every Republican congressman and senator. But there is no partisanship in Mr. Nixon's speech.
The people of the Soviet Union, and even more the people of Poland, who lost 1 out of 4 citizens in World War II, have suffered a great deal in wartime, and they desperately want peace.
At Detroit, the 9th NBA All-Star Game, the East in dark uniforms, West in white controlling the ball. Minneapolis rookie Elgin Baylor shows the play that entitled him to share the Outstanding Player Award for this game. The favorite East fights back. Watch Boston's Bob Cousy. A leg injury made his presence doubtful, but he's in great form. Cousy's shot hits the rim, but Bill Russell, another Celtic, taps it in. A little later, Cousy steals the ball from Slater Martin of St. Louis, and he's off once more. But despite Cousy's brilliant play, the West stays in charge. Bob Pettit, bullseye. Again, the West. Gene Shue of Detroit connects, and the West chokes off a last rally with Pettit's long pass to Jack Twyman for an easy layup. Final score 124 to 108.
Before 10,000 at Indianapolis, heavyweight champion Floyd Patterson slashes away at his fourth challenger, Britain's Brian London. In the ninth round, a thunderous barrage of body blows to bring down London's guard and crack open the dogged defense of the 10-1 underdog. London goes down on one knee after a smashing right high on the cheek late in the 10th round. But the bell at the count of 5 saves the challenger. '11th round. This is Patterson's first title defense in months. Afterwards, he said he was rusty, only 55% of himself. But the champ's reflexes are clicking now, and he solves London's defense. London is under blistering fire, and a smashing hook drives him across the ring for the KO. Referee Frank Sikora counts him out, outboxed and outgunned all the way, but a stubborn contender to the end. At ringside was Sweden's Ingemar Johansson, who will meet Patterson in June. Then the champion expects to be 100% at par, thanks in part to this solid workout against London. Coming up, what may be Patterson's toughest fight since his title bout with Archie Moore. The World Series comes to Comiskey Park, home of the Chicago White Sox, for the first time in 40 years. And a cheering crowd of over 48,000 is on hand for the opening of the 1959 Baseball Classic. The loyal Chi Sox partisans have waited a long time for this one. In the pregame spotlight, rival managers Walt Alston, Los Angeles Dodgers, and Al Lopez of the incredible Pale Hose. At the outset, the Sox throw away the script. Instead of their so-called powder puff attack, they're blasting away from the start. In the first inning, L.A. pitcher Roger Craig is tagged for a sizzling single by Big Ted Kluszewski, driving in the first run. The mighty Klu at bat in the third, one man on. Norm Locker makes a desperate leap, but it's into the stands. A home run. A sensational third inning as Chicago's so-called hitless wonders roll up 7 runs, and the Dodgers help matters along with a record-tying 3 errors. Veteran Early Wynn pitched brilliantly for the Sox, holding Los Angeles scoreless. But the hero of the day was muscular Ted Kluszewski. A National League cast-off, his thundering bat delivered again and again for Chicago. This is his second homer of the day, a towering 400-foot drive into the upper deck, bringing his RBI total to 5 runs to tie a series record. Final score, 11-0. A jolting setback for the Dodgers, a sensational victory for the Sox. The World Series came to a rousing climax in Chicago with the White Sox championship contenders for the first time in many years, but looking very shaky against the Los Angeles Dodgers miracle team. In the 6th game, Los Angeles exploded with Duke Snider's third inning homer for a 2-0 lead. Then in the 4th, reliever Dick Donovan was belted for 6 more runs. Wally Moon climaxed the barrage with a long drive into the stands. On the mound to finish it off for the Dodgers, Larry Sherry, who was responsible for all 4 L.A. victories. From 7th place at the end of the previous season, the Dodgers rebounded to the top in 59, first team in Diamond history to turn the trick. Track and field sensation of the year was the 7 feet, inch and a quarter high jump of John Curtis Thomas at Madison Square Garden. A dazzling new world record for the 17-year-old Boston U freshman. Turf history was made at Churchill Downs with the sensational finish of the Kentucky Derby. Tommy Lee and Sword Dancer in one of the greatest stretch duels ever. It produced the only foul claim in Derby history, but Tommy Lee won the Run for the Roses.
British Reserve is somewhat strained by an odd apparition on the streets of London, and puzzle stares continue even after the explanation leaks out. It's a smog mask, carrying a few cubic feet of pure, salubrious air for its wearer to breathe, complete with a candle-powered defroster. A bit cumbersome, murmur the skeptical, but some people persist in trying to do something about the weather. If you can't change it, shut it out, which is the general idea behind this space helmet-type gadget. As for being impractical, not at all, say its advocates. It's ingeniously adapted for the wearer's convenience. All the social amenities may be observed. And sustenance can be taken in. A gal could even fit a new chapeau under that dome.
At America's muscle metropolis, York, Pennsylvania, the National AAU Weightlifting Championships. And in the early events, it looks like a collection of halfway Hercules have made the mistake of trying to play with the big boys. These are only the lightweights. Finally, up steps Paul Goldberg of Livingston, New Jersey, to prove it can be done. Spacemen of tomorrow, 7 astronauts of Project Mercury experience the eerie sensation of total weightlessness in special training flights. A preview of man's first space voyage.
Chicago's 51st Annual Automobile Show showcases a glittering array of vehicular innovation. Everything you'll see on the highway in the months ahead, with a few touches right out of Cloudville. Wheelless models literally cushioned on air and propelled at sensational speeds by the same triple jet that holds them off the ground. Sounds fantastic, true, but the engineers have already got a wheelless scooter for a demonstration model. Much closer to reality, a handy headrest if you're overwhelmed by automotive progress. There's a new Japanese addition to the ranks of the little foreign cars which are increasingly with us and increasingly not so little. This baby has a folding bed inside.
What place has the artist in the age of mechanization? Guillermo Madagna has the answer. It depends on who's in command, man or machine. He has bent the typewriter to his will, creating a new artistic medium out of the few dozen arbitrary black and white symbols the keyboard produces. The result? A singular imitation of life. Amazingly faithful portraits, it's part-time work for this Spanish civil servant, but he's already won several awards for his typewriter art, proving the artist's tools are less important than his heart and skill. You just have to know your P's and Q's. Mardi Gras, Mediterranean style. It's the Viareggio Carnival, and to the amazement of many, the pre-Lenten celebrants have outdone previous year's efforts with their gala, gaudy, gargantuan procession of gigantic animated figures out of fantasy and faith. They start with papier-mâché and molto enthusiasm, and each year they come up with something bigger and better. Every year a carnival that's breathtaking in its color and exuberance. Imagination runs wild. Even a clock becomes a colossal cosmic caprice, and the hours dance away in a tumult of celebration. Carnival excitement aplenty to offset the Lenten season ahead. Solemn thoughts are for the future. It's Carnival!